I froze when Lydia's voice sliced through the air like a blade. "You're going to transfer the house, the car, and all your assets to my name. You don't deserve any of it, Evelyn." She said it calmly, almost bored, as if she were reciting a grocery list. I stared at her across my own living room, the home I'd sacrificed a decade to build, my breath caught somewhere between disbelief and an instinctive rising fear. My 30-year-old sister, the girl I once carried on my hip and defended from neighborhood bullies, sat there with her manicured hands folded neatly, waiting for my compliance, like this was the most natural request in the world. "Otherwise," she added, her lips curling into a smile that had nothing to do with warmth, "I'll have no choice but to get a lawyer involved. You know the house was supposed to be mine anyway." It was the way she said it, certain, rehearsed, entitled, that made the temperature in the room drop. For the first time in my life, I wondered if I'd ever truly known her at all. I didn't answer. I couldn't. There was too much happening inside my chest. Shock, betrayal, anger, and underneath all of it, something I didn't want to name. Grief. This was my home, my sanctuary. My proof that financial independence wasn't just a concept, but something tangible, earned, held, protected. Lydia's words weren't just a threat. They were a violation. And something in me understood instantly that nothing about this was spontaneous. I inhaled slowly to steady my voice. "I'll think about it," I said, sounding steadier than I felt. The truth? I wasn't going to think about it. I was going to act. She smirked, as if she'd won something. Then she grabbed her purse and breezed out of my condo, leaving the faint smell of expensive perfume and a trail of destruction behind her. When the door closed, silence rushed in so loud it felt like pressure against my skull. I didn't move for a long moment. I just sat there, hearing my heartbeat in my ears, staring at the door she had walked out through. I knew that if I replayed her words, I'd crumble. So I didn't. I focused instead on the terrible electric clarity running through me. Because beneath all the shock was something sharper, understanding. Understanding that Lydia had shown her hand. Understanding that nothing about this came from love, or even sibling resentment. This was strategy, calculation, a plan years in the making. Only then did I stand. I walked into my home office, shut the door, and leaned both palms against the desk I'd bought with my first promotion bonus. The wood felt cool beneath my skin, grounding me. I whispered to the empty room, "Okay, let's start." The first thing I did was pull every drawer open and lay out the documents I kept tucked away. Mortgage payoff statements, title papers, car ownership documents, savings account confirmations, insurance policies. I'd spent 10 years building these things piece by piece, working job after job, taking on hours no one else wanted, mastering real estate law until the knowledge lived in my bones. No one had gifted me anything. No one had carried me financially, not even for a moment. I picked up the title to my Scottsdale home, the legal proof that it belonged to me and only me. Lydia's voice echoed in my mind. "You don't deserve it." My jaw tightened. I did deserve it. I had earned it. I had bled for it. I started going through each document, not because anything was out of place, but because holding them reminded me that I wasn't powerless, that I wasn't some naive woman who could be bullied by her sister's sudden ambition. I was an attorney, a damn good one, and if Lydia wanted to make this legal, I would make it legal. After securing the documents back into their folders, I turned toward my computer and began changing passwords everywhere. Banking, mortgage portals, credit lines, insurance, even my smart home system. Every login became a longer, more complex passphrase that Lydia could never guess. My fingers moved with a furious, focused rhythm, as if they already knew what was coming. But as I worked, memories pushed their way in. Memories of me and Lydia as children, running through our small New Mexico backyard, laughing until we couldn't breathe. Lydia clinging to my arm when she was scared of thunderstorms. Lydia crying when she scraped her knee, and me being the one to carry her inside. our mother's voice echoing encouragement to both of us. Her two girls, so different, so inseparable. Inseparable. I closed my eyes for a moment. What happened to us? But I knew the answer. We grew up. And while I built a life brick by brick, Lydia drifted through hers, waiting for someone else to hand her the foundation. A notification flashed on my phone. Incoming call. Lydia. Of course she was already calling. She must have expected me to panic, to beg, to negotiate, to be the older sister who fixed everything. I declined the call. Seconds later, another notification. Voicemail received. I didn't listen to it. I didn't need to. I knew how Lydia operated. She would mask manipulation as sincerity, wrap demands inside guilt, make every boundary I set feel like cruelty. My mother's voice rose in my memory. Wealth isn't just about what you earn, it's about what you protect. She had said that to me once, near the end of her life. She had learned it the hardest way possible after my father left her with nothing but debts and heartbreak. She'd warned me gently but firmly, don't ever let anyone, family, partner, anyone, take from you what you've built. I hadn't expected she meant Lydia, too. The voicemail icon blinked. I let it blink. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water, sat back down at my desk, and took a long breath. My mind was finally sharp enough to see the full picture. Lydia hadn't just suddenly decided she wanted my assets. This was the culmination of years of small entitlement, subtle grabs at control, growing resentment, financial instability, and the creeping belief that my success should somehow belong to her. I'd ignored the signs. I'd dismissed them as quirks, moods, insecurities. I had wanted to give her grace because she was my sister, but grace without boundaries is just self-destruction. I clicked open my email and began backing up camera footage from the past few weeks. Lydia had been at my house more often than necessary. She'd hovered in rooms she didn't need to be in. She'd asked questions about my mortgage, my savings, my insurance, questions that now rang like alarms. As I transferred the files, something tightened in my throat. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want this role, documenting evidence against my own blood, preparing for a battle I never wanted. But battles aren't always chosen. Sometimes they are handed to you by the people you least expect. I grabbed my phone and typed a message to the one person I trusted to tell me the truth without sugarcoating it. Grace, are you awake? 3 dots appeared immediately. For you? Always. What happened? I stared at the text, then wrote, I think Lydia is trying to take my house. The dots disappeared, then reappeared. I'm on my way. Do not talk to her until I get there. I locked my phone and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The air in the room felt heavier, as though the walls themselves understood what was coming. There was no going back now. I stood and walked through the house, the place I had furnished with the quiet pride of a woman who had climbed her way up from nothing. The walls I'd painted myself, the floors I'd refinished, the kitchen I'd worked late nights to afford. Every corner held a story, a sacrifice, a victory. And the idea that Lydia believed she had a right to any of it? Something hot and fierce lit inside me. My sister thought she could take the life I had built. She was wrong. I reached for the front door and twisted the deadbolt, locking it with a soft, final click. Then I turned off every light except one in the hall. The house was still, but my heart was steady. I wasn't afraid anymore. Lydia had crossed a line. And now, I was done letting her walk anywhere she pleased in my life. Grace would be here soon. Jonathan would follow after that. I had a long night ahead of me, gathering, preparing, documenting. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something like strength rising inside me. I whispered to the quiet house, to myself, to the memory of my mother. I'm ready. Because tomorrow, everything would begin. Grace arrived 20 minutes after my text, still in her navy scrubs from the hospital, hair pulled into a messy bun she probably hadn't touched since dawn. She didn't bother knocking. She knew the door would be locked. Instead, she called out through the wood, "Evelyn, Open up. It's me. Her voice alone made my shoulders drop a little, not in relief, but in recognition. Grace was the kind of friend who had stood by me through law school breakdowns, career meltdowns, and the long months of caring for my mother near the end. If there was anyone in this world who could help me face what Lydia had become, it was her. When I opened the door, Grace stepped inside, scanned my face, then closed it gently behind her. "Tell me everything," she said, not bothering to sit. She didn't need pleasantries. She needed facts. I started from the beginning, Lydia's demand, her tone, the entitlement dripping from every word. And by the time I finished, Grace's expression had shifted from concern to something darker. "She said you don't deserve your own house?" Grace repeated slowly, as if she needed to hear it again to believe it. "Your sister actually said that?" "Yes." Grace paced once across my living room and back, arms crossed. "This is calculated. This isn't impulsive. She came in with a script. And she expected you to fold." "I know," I whispered. "Good," Grace said sharply, "because you need to see this for what it is. She's not having a moment, she's making a move." I sank down onto the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees, palms pressed together. What I can't figure out is, why now? Why like this? Why escalate from jealousy to whatever this is? Grace sat beside me. "Ev, your sister has always lived like life owes her something, and now she thinks you owe her everything." I inhaled slowly. It was painful, not because Grace was wrong, but because she wasn't. Grace leaned back and glanced around the room as if seeing it through Lydia's eyes. "She walked in here, saw the house you built, the life you carved out of air and grit, and decided she should have it, without lifting a finger." She met my eyes. "She's your sister, yes, but she's also someone who wants your life instead of her own." The words landed like a dull ache beneath my ribs. Before I could respond, Grace lifted my phone from the table. "Show me the voicemail." I hesitated. Then I unlocked the phone and handed it to her. Listening to Lydia's voice felt like replaying a nightmare I wasn't ready to face, but Grace pressed play anyway. Lydia's voice filled the room, smooth, confident, and dripping with false sorrow. "Evelyn, I just want to talk. I don't know why you're being so dramatic about something that's clearly fair. You know this wasn't just your house. It was Mom's dream for us to share things equally. I don't want to bring in a lawyer, but I will if you force me. Call me back." Grace snorted softly. "That's not a voicemail. That's emotional blackmail dipped in honey." She replayed the last line. "I don't want to bring in a lawyer, but I will." She's testing how far she can push. "My mother never said anything about sharing property," I said quietly. "Not once." "Of course not," Grace said. "But Lydia knows you'll choke on guilt before you even question that claim. She's weaponizing your grief." I swallowed hard, because hearing it out loud made the truth unavoidable. Grace put a hand on my shoulder. "Ev, you need someone stronger than me for this next part. You need legal backup." "I know," I murmured. "There's someone I can call." But before I dialed, Grace insisted we walk through the house together. If she's planning something, I want to see what she's already tried. We moved from room to room, kitchen, office, bedroom. Grace scanning surfaces, touching nothing but inspecting everything. Halfway through the process, she paused by the hallway cabinet where I kept my financial binders. "Ev," she said, pointing. "Was this drawer always slightly open like that?" I knelt down. The gap was tiny, barely noticeable. But I never left drawers open. Ever. My throat tightened. "Lydia was here yesterday. She wandered around while I took a call." Grace's expression sharpened. "She went through your documents." I checked the folders. Everything was still there, but some pages were out of order. Slightly misaligned. A fingerprint smudge where there shouldn't have been one. I felt physically ill. Grace spoke softly. "She's already crossed the line." I forced myself to breathe, slow, controlled. Then I straightened up. I'm calling Jonathan. Grace nodded. Good. And don't downplay anything. Tell him exactly what she said. I stepped into my office, closed the door, and dialed the number of a man I respected more than almost anyone in the legal field. Jonathan Hale, the senior attorney who had guided me through my early years in commercial real estate. He answered on the second ring. Evelyn? Everything all right? No, I said quietly. I need your help. It's my sister. There was a brief silence on the other end. Jonathan was not a man who rushed to fill uncomfortable pauses. Tell me what happened. I repeated Lydia's demand, her threat, and the voicemail. I told him about the drawer, the smudged fingerprints, the shift in her behavior over the past few months. Each detail made his voice grow more serious. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. Evelyn, you are dealing with coercion wrapped in familial guilt. This is not a property dispute. This is an attempt to seize your assets through emotional manipulation. Hearing it in legal terms made everything inside me go cold. Legally speaking, he continued, she has no standing. None. She cannot claim your home, your vehicle, your savings, or any part of your estate without your voluntary consent, which means her only leverage is psychological. And if I don't bend, I asked. Then she will escalate. People like Lydia always escalate. His tone softened. But she cannot win unless you give her access. Change every password, document every interaction. And Evelyn, don't meet with her alone. I let out a shaky breath. I've already changed all my passwords. Good. Now start a written log. Dates, times, threats, unusual behavior. And Evelyn, record your conversations. She may try to twist your words later. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Thank you. I'll be here. And Evelyn, protect yourself first, family or not. When I hung up, my chest felt tight but steadier, controlled, like the storm had a path now. Grace walked back in. What did he say? That she has no legal claim, and that she'll escalate. Grace nodded grimly. I agree with him. We spent another hour securing everything, locking documents in a fireproof safe, backing up security camera footage, hiding sensitive files in digital vaults. At every new precaution, I could feel Lydia slipping further and further from the person I'd once loved and into the shape of a stranger. Around 10, Grace made me tea and forced me to sit. You need to breathe. I tried, truly, but the air still felt thick. I've been thinking, I said finally. How long has she been planning this? Grace hesitated. Think back. When did she start asking questions about your mortgage? A year ago, I whispered. And when did she start showing up unannounced just to hang out? Around the same time. Grace's eyes softened in something like apology. She's been circling your assets for a year. You just didn't see the pattern. My stomach twisted. Every holiday visit, every sweet smile, every sudden interest in my budget or career. None of it had been affectionate curiosity. It had been reconnaissance. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. God, I was so blind. You weren't blind, Grace said firmly. You were trusting. She exploited that. The words made my chest ache, because trust wasn't something I gave easily. Not after watching my mother lose everything to a man she trusted too much. But Lydia hadn't been a partner or a lover. She had been my sister, the one person I thought I could never lose. After Grace left, I sat on the couch and scrolled through old photos. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, laughing selfies from our 20s, Lydia's arm always wrapped around mine, her smile bright, my guard down. The grief hit me so suddenly I had to put the phone down. I whispered into the stillness, "Why would you do this to me?" No answer came. I ended the night by double-checking the locks, the windows, the cameras. I plugged my phone into the charger and placed it next to me, knowing Lydia would text again. Maybe she already had. But I wasn't going to look. Not tonight. Tonight I let myself mourn the sister I had lost, because the one who stood in her place now wasn't family. She was a threat. And tomorrow I would face her with eyes wide open. I didn't sleep that night. I drifted in and out of shallow, uneasy dozing, waking every time the house settled or a car passed outside. My mind kept replaying Lydia's face, her tone, the certainty in her eyes. By dawn, exhaustion clung to me like damp fog, but adrenaline kept me upright. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen island, and stared at the rising sun through the window, my morning ritual, usually the calmest part of my day. But today the sunlight felt intrusive, almost accusatory, asking how I had let things spiral this far without seeing the truth. I was halfway through my mug when I heard 3 sharp knocks on the front door. Not frantic, not hesitant, just deliberate. The kind of knock someone uses when they believe they have the right to enter. I stood frozen for a second, coffee halfway to my lips. Then I placed the mug down carefully and walked toward the door, forcing my heartbeat to slow. The peephole confirmed what I already knew. Lydia. She was put together flawlessly. Pressed white blouse, high-waisted slacks, makeup fresh, hair glossy. A stark contrast to my wrinkled sleep shirt and restless eyes. She looked like someone arriving to close a business deal, or to collect what she believed she was owed. I took one slow breath, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door just enough to block her from walking in. Lydia gave me a bright, brittle smile. "Good morning, Ev. Can we talk?" "We talked yesterday," I said calmly. "Well, I talked. You mostly stared at me like I'd grown a second head." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I thought we should finish the conversation like adults." I kept my hand on the door. "I'm not comfortable having you inside my home right now." Her expression flickered. Surprise, then annoyance, then practiced softness. "Ev, seriously? I'm your sister." "Exactly." I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. Lydia exhaled in a dramatic huff and stepped back. "Fine, but you're being overly defensive." She crossed her arms. "I came here because I want us to clear the air. I feel like you misunderstood what I meant yesterday." "I didn't misunderstand," I said. "You asked me to transfer ownership of my house, my car, and my assets to you." Lydia rolled her eyes. "And you make it sound so extreme. Ev, this house was supposed to be ours. Mom always said that what belonged to her daughters should be shared, that we'd take care of each other. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable." "She never said that," I said quietly. "Not once." Lydia's jaw tightened, but she recovered almost instantly. "Look, maybe I phrased it badly. I'm not demanding anything. I'm asking you to recognize fairness. You're living here alone with more space than you need, more money than you use, and I'm struggling." For the first time, something genuine cracked through, an ember of resentment she hadn't even bothered hiding, and my chest tightened at the realization. This wasn't sudden. This had been simmering in her for years. "Lydia," I said carefully, "struggling doesn't give you the right to take my home." Her composure shattered. "Take," she snapped. "God, listen to yourself. I'm not trying to take anything. I'm asking for what I deserve." I felt something inside me cool, settle. "You don't deserve things just because I have them." Her face flushed red, and in that moment, I realized we were standing on opposite ends of a chasm neither of us had created in a day. A chasm Lydia had been widening every year she watched me build a life she felt entitled to. She took a breath and smoothed her hair back. "Look, Ev, I don't want this to get ugly. But you're leaving me no choice. If you won't voluntarily share what should belong to both of us, there are legal ways to settle this." I stared at her. "There aren't." She smirked. "You'd be surprised." That was when I knew, really knew, that she wasn't bluffing. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't angry in the moment. She had a plan, and she believed fully in her ability to execute it. I kept my voice steady. "I spoke with my attorney last night." Her eyes widened just enough to crack her mask. "You, what?" I told him everything you said, Lydia laughed, a short, sharp sound. You're unbelievable. You called a lawyer on your own sister, and I'm the unreasonable one? You threatened me with legal action, I reminded her, and now you're trying to intimidate me by saying you have a lawyer. She shook her head. This is pathetic. Lydia, I said softly, go home. Her expression hardened. For a moment she simply stared at me, searching for something, maybe the old version of me who would have caved. But that version was gone. Fine, she spat, but don't say I didn't try. I started to close the door, but Lydia leaned forward, voice dropping to a hiss. You're going to regret making this difficult. Then she turned and walked away with the sharp, angry steps of someone who didn't get their way for the first time in a long time. When the door clicked shut, my legs nearly gave out. I sank against the wall and pressed my palms into my eyes. Every muscle in my body trembled with a mix of adrenaline and heartbreak. Not because she had threatened me, but because I had finally seen the truth without the filter of obligation. Lydia wasn't misguided. She was dangerous. I forced myself to stand. I had a full day ahead, work, documentation, tightening every security measure I could think of. But there was one more thing I needed to do before anything else. I checked the hallway camera footage, and my breath caught. The camera had recorded something I hadn't heard from behind the door. Lydia, after storming off, stopping halfway down the walkway to answer her phone. Her voice was low, but the audio caught enough. She didn't budge, Lydia whispered angrily. Yes, I know. I said I tried. What do you want me to do? She won't sign anything yet. Yet. Fine. Tonight. I'll come over later. Yes, I'll get her to change her mind. Then she hung up and walked away, unaware I had just heard the confirmation of everything I feared. She wasn't acting alone, and she was coming back. The realization pulsed through me like a warning bell. I replayed the clip 3 times, memorizing the exact tone in her voice, cornered, desperate, determined. She wasn't done with me. She was regrouping, planning her next approach. Maybe tonight, maybe sooner. I walked into my office, opened Jonathan's message from last night, and began a detailed entry in the log he'd instructed me to keep. Time, date, what Lydia said, the footage I'd captured, her tone, her threat, the phone call, all of it. With every word I typed, my sadness hardened into something else, something steadier, something that felt like the beginning of a line being drawn. Around noon, I forced myself to go into work. My job required a level of focus that usually carved order out of chaos. But today, even zoning in on legal contracts couldn't quiet my mind. I kept hearing Lydia's voice, "You'll regret making this difficult," and replaying all the years she had leaned on me, begged for help, drifted through life expecting someone else to catch her. I'd caught her so many times, she had grown used to the feeling of being held, but now she had learned how to weaponize it. During my break, Grace called me. Did she show up again? Yes, I said. Grace's silence said everything she didn't want to vocalize. Then she asked the question I had been avoiding. Do you think she'd try to get into your house? I looked out of my office window at the parking lot below. I think she's already thinking about it. Grace didn't argue. She simply said, "Change your locks today." I already scheduled it for tomorrow morning, I told her. Good. And Ev? Yes? She's not thinking like a sister anymore. You need to stop thinking like one too. I closed my eyes because I knew she was right. By the time I finished work and drove home, dusk had settled over the neighborhood. The air felt charged with something I couldn't name. I parked my car, grabbed my briefcase, and walked inside quickly, locking the door behind me. An uneasy stillness clung to the house. I set my things down, turned on the kitchen light, and pulled out leftovers for dinner. But my appetite was gone. Instead, I walked room to room again, checking windows, ensuring everything was exactly as I'd left it. And that was when I saw it. A message slipped halfway under my front door, not in an envelope, handwritten, sharp, hurried strokes of Lydia's cursive. Ev, we are not done. Stop ignoring me. I'm coming back tonight. Don't make this harder than it has to be. No signature. Just a scribbled flourish at the bottom that told me everything I needed to know. She was escalating, exactly as Jonathan predicted. I felt something inside me shift, resolve or fear, or maybe both. But whatever it was, it pushed my body into motion before my mind could catch up. I locked every window, closed every curtain, turned on my exterior floodlights. And then, for the first time in my life, I slid a heavy chair under the doorknob like I'd seen people do in movies. It felt dramatic, paranoid even. But my gut insisted. When I finally sat down at the kitchen table, the house humming with tension around me, I realized something with startling clarity. Whatever happened next, whatever tonight brought, I would no longer meet Lydia as her older sister. I would meet her as the woman she was trying to destroy, and I would not lose. I woke before sunrise, jolted upright by a dream so vivid it clung to me like sweat. In the dream, someone was shaking the front door, relentlessly, violently, while a woman's voice hissed my name through the wood. When I opened my eyes, darkness still pressed against the windows, but my heart was racing as if I'd lived the moment in real time. For several seconds I just sat there, listening, waiting for the nightmare to bleed into reality. Nothing. Only the hum of my refrigerator. Still, I couldn't ignore the unease tightening under my ribs. Last night's note from Lydia had curled into my mind and stayed there. I'm coming back tonight. The words had been ringing in my ears long after I locked myself in my bedroom, long after I forced myself to lie down, long after I realized sleep wouldn't come easily. When I finally got out of bed, the house felt too quiet, too expectant. I moved slowly through the rooms, checking every lock again, then ended up in the kitchen with my hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. The caffeine did nothing. My stomach remained knotted, my thoughts too sharp. At 7 on the dot, the locksmith arrived. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and forearms like tree trunks. "Morning," he said. "You must be Ms. Hart. Got a rush order for a full lock replacement." "Yes," I said, stepping aside so he could enter. "All exterior points, and the garage keypad." "Rough week?" he asked lightly. I tried to smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. "You could say that." He nodded once, understanding without prying, and got to work. While he drilled and replaced deadbolts, I stood in the hallway, arms crossed, watching metal shavings scatter on the floor like glitter from a battle. Every thud, every clink of metal settling into place, felt like reclaiming a piece of something Lydia had tried to take. When the locksmith finished, he handed me a set of sleek digital fobs and a paper with new temporary access codes. "Change the code again tonight," he warned, "just in case anyone saw me working here." Anyone, in this context, meant Lydia. "Thank you," I whispered. He gave me a sympathetic tilt of his head. "Protect your space, ma'am. You'd be surprised how many people need to learn that the hard way." I swallowed hard. I'm learning. After he left, I stood with my back against the door, breathing in the scent of new metal. It should have comforted me. It didn't. Because locks keep out strangers, not people who used to have keys, not sisters who believe the house is theirs by destiny. I spent the next hour taking photos of each lock for documentation, then sat down at my desk and updated my written log. Every detail mattered. Halfway through the entry, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Is this Evelyn?" "This is Miranda from the HOA. We spoke briefly before. Could you call me as soon as possible?" My stomach dropped. I dialed immediately. The woman who answered sounded uneasy. "Ms. Hart, we received another call from your sister this morning." Of course she did. "What did she say now?" I asked, emotionless. "She insisted she is the upcoming co-owner of your home and requested we send her the updated bylaws, gate codes, and emergency access protocols." Miranda hesitated. She sounded extremely confident she had a legal right to those documents. Cold pressure built behind my sternum. "I'm so sorry she bothered you," I said. "She has no ownership rights. None. I'll handle this." I assumed as much, Miranda replied gently. But the way she spoke, well, I thought you should know she seems very determined. Determined. That was one way to put it. Thank you for telling me, I said before ending the call. I stared at my phone for a long moment. The reality crystallized with painful clarity. Lydia wasn't just lashing out in anger. She was mapping out a path, a strategy. She believed each door she knocked on would open for her, and she was testing how easily my boundaries would buckle. Grace called right as I set the phone down. "Morning," she said. "You holding up?" "Barely," I admitted. "I figured," she replied. "Listen, I've been thinking. Lydia didn't escalate overnight. She's been doing this in stages." That made something inside me still. What stages? First, she dangled guilt, then entitlement. After that, she introduced threats. Now she's building a false sense of legitimacy, trying to convince others she has claims to your property. That's always a precursor to legal fabrication. I pressed my fingers to my temple. She's rewriting reality. She's rewriting your reality, Grace corrected. Don't let her. I closed my eyes. Jonathan said the same thing. Well, she said dryly, Jonathan's smarter than me, but we're aligned. That's a good sign. For a moment, the heaviness lifted. Then another knock rang out through the house. Sharp, repetitive, urgent. Grace heard it through the phone. "Ev?" "I think she's here," I whispered. "Do not open the door." "I won't." I walked toward the peephole slowly, each step tightening the coil in my chest. It wasn't Lydia. It was Derek. Tall, smug Derek, wearing a charcoal blazer and holding a sleek leather folder under one arm. He leaned casually against the railing like he had all the time in the world, like he belonged here. My pulse spiked. I pulled the phone from my ear and murmured, "It's not Lydia. It's him." Grace's voice sharpened instantly. "Ev, don't engage. He's worse. He's manipulative and charming. That combination is lethal." I believed her, but Derek had already seen movement behind the peephole. "Evelyn," he called smoothly. "Good morning. I know you're there." My jaw clenched. I said nothing. He chuckled like this was all a charming misunderstanding. "Look, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to clear the air." I didn't move. He tapped the door lightly. "I'm holding some documents Lydia and I want to review with you. Nothing hostile, just options." Options. The arrogance made my skin crawl. "You should open the door," Derek added, "because involving attorneys this early won't look great for you." "For me?" I pressed the phone back to my ear. "Grace, what do I do?" She didn't hesitate. "Document him. Record everything. And don't speak unless absolutely necessary." I hit the record button on my phone, slipped it into my pocket, and stood silently behind the door. Derek knocked again, harder. "Evelyn, don't make this harder. Lydia is heartbroken. She doesn't want things to get ugly," I whispered under my breath. "That's a lie." He continued, "We're giving you the chance to settle this privately. No public filings, no embarrassment, just family." Family. I almost laughed. When I didn't open the door, Derek exhaled loudly. "Fine, have it your way. Lydia and I will be back with our attorney later. This isn't going away." After a few seconds, I heard retreating footsteps, then silence. But the silence didn't comfort me. It vibrated with threat. I waited a full minute before peeking through the window. Derek was getting into his car, talking animatedly on his phone. Even from a distance, his expression was self-assured, confident. He believed the outcome was already written. He believed I was the weak link. He believed Lydia's guilt and manipulation would break me down like it always had. He believed wrong. Grace stayed on the line until I calmed enough to speak clearly. When I told her everything Derek said, she whistled softly. "He's not just the boyfriend, Ev. He's the architect." "I know," I whispered. "And Lydia trusts him." "She shouldn't," Grace said. "But that's her problem. Yours is making sure neither of them gets within a mile of your assets." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. After we hung up, I sank into a kitchen chair and stared at the leather folder Derek had tried to use as bait. I imagined what was inside: printed forms, pre-written agreements, maybe even templates he wanted me to sign. The thought made my heart pound. This wasn't sibling conflict, this was an operation, and I was the target. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text, an unfamiliar number again. "Expect us today. You can't avoid this forever. No name." But the boldness, the cold confidence, that was Lydia's handwriting translated into text message form. I deleted nothing. Every message was evidence. The hours crawled by in tension. I tried to work but couldn't focus. Every sound outside made my muscles tense. Every shadow near my front door made me stand and check the peephole again. Lydia had once been the person who made me laugh until I cried. Now she made me look over my shoulder in my own home. Around mid-afternoon, I forced myself to eat something, a sandwich I barely tasted. Halfway through chewing, another knock rattled the door. Fast, aggressive, unmistakable. I stood quickly, pulse hammering. My knees wobbled, but I stayed steady enough to reach the door silently. Through the peephole, Lydia, hair perfect, lipstick dark, eyes sharp, hands on her hips. Behind her stood a man in a gray suit holding a briefcase, the lawyer she had promised. I inhaled once, then very slowly stepped back from the door. No, not today, not on her timeline. I picked up my phone and pressed record again. Lydia's voice rose through the door, muffled but still clear enough. "Evelyn, open the door. We're here to discuss your transfer options." Her lawyer spoke next. Calm, professional. "Ms. Hart, we would appreciate a moment of your time." My knees wobbled harder. Transfer options. The sheer audacity. I stayed silent. After 30 seconds, Lydia hissed something to the attorney. He said something back, a warning tone, but she ignored it and pounded on the door again. "I know you're inside." I closed my eyes. This wasn't my sister anymore. This was a woman intoxicated by the idea of power she believed she could take. Minutes later, they left, but not quietly. Lydia bent down, shoved another note under my door, and stomped away. The lawyer murmured something about protocol and next steps, but Lydia spoke over him. When their footsteps faded, I retrieved the note. This one wasn't threatening. This one was chilling. "If you won't give it freely, we'll get it another way. You can't hide behind locked doors forever. We'll be back." My hands trembled as I folded the paper and placed it into the evidence file. My home was still quiet, but everything had changed, because Lydia wasn't done escalating, and she had no idea I was documenting every second, no idea she was building the very case that would destroy her plan, no idea that the sister she thought she could manipulate had finally become someone else, a woman preparing for war. I spent the rest of the afternoon sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the note Lydia shoved under my door until the ink on the page blurred. I wasn't sure whether it was fear or disbelief tightening in my chest, but whatever it was, it made breathing feel like a deliberate effort. Lydia's handwriting, usually looping, soft, almost girlish, looked jagged this time, rushed, angry. Her message wasn't the plea of a sister. It was the demand of someone who believed she had already won. The house felt too quiet, too aware of my shifting heartbeat. I stood abruptly, needing movement, needing air, and walked the perimeter of each room as though inspecting a crime scene. My life had become a checklist of locks, passwords, cameras, and legal documentation, and all because my little sister decided she deserved everything I'd worked a decade to build. Around 6, my security system pinged with a notification. Someone had accessed the app from an unknown device. My blood ran cold. I changed the password within seconds, hands shaking, then checked my access logs. The intrusion attempt had failed, but the timing wasn't random. Lydia and Derek had been here earlier. They'd seen the cameras, and clearly they were testing my defenses. I grabbed my phone and hit call. Jonathan answered on the first ring. "Evelyn?" "She tried to access my security system," I said, forcing the words through clenched teeth. "Your sister?" "Or Derek. They were both here. Jonathan went silent, then spoke with the low, controlled tone he used when preparing for litigation. At this point, you need to assume their intentions are not only manipulative but invasive. Do not contact them. Do not respond. Document everything. I am. You're doing well, he continued. But you also need to be prepared. Based on what you've told me, I believe your sister is being coached. Coached how? A third party is pushing her to escalate. She's not doing this alone. My stomach twisted. You think it's Derek? I do. I looked around my house again, the way someone looks at their belongings before a storm hits. Jonathan, she's not the same person anymore. She's someone who stands to gain from harming you financially, he said gently, and that's enough to shift anyone's behavior, especially someone who's lived their life believing they're entitled to more. I pressed my palm against the wall to steady myself. She said she's coming back tonight. Then you must not open the door, he warned. And Evelyn, record everything. These kinds of people rely on rewriting the narrative later. I promised him I would. After we hung up, I exhaled a shaky breath. This wasn't family conflict anymore. It was attempted financial coercion. And I wasn't unarmed. The sun dipped behind the houses across the street, turning the sky into a bruised purple. I turned on my exterior lights, slipped my phone into my pocket, and paced until the movement eased the pressure in my chest. But every few minutes my mind drifted back to Lydia, her calculated smile, her sudden softness, her insistence that we share what should belong to both of us. It was the softness that terrified me more than the anger, because softness was manipulation. Softness was Lydia's favorite mask. My doorbell rang at 7:30, not the aggressive pounding from earlier, just a single polite chime. I froze. Through the peephole I saw her, the same flawless hair, the same careful posture. But this time she'd brought something else, a peace offering, a small pink bakery box tied with a ribbon. Once upon a time, Lydia brought me cupcakes when I cried over final exams or when my first boyfriend dumped me. Now the image felt grotesque, sentimental weaponry. I didn't move, didn't blink. After 30 seconds, Lydia sighed dramatically. Ev, please open the door. I brought your favorite, coconut almond with the cream filling. My jaw tightened. She remembered everything when it benefited her. Ev, she repeated, softer this time, her voice dipped in honey. I don't want to fight. What happened earlier? That wasn't me. I was emotional. You know how I get sometimes. A familiar ache pushed at my ribs, an ache I'd carried since childhood, the one that made me responsible for her moods, her choices, her consequences. But not anymore. She pressed her face closer to the door. Let's just talk. Please, I'm your sister. You can't shut me out forever. I stayed silent. Her sweetness cracked. I know you hear me, she snapped, the box trembling slightly in her grip. You can't avoid this. You can't just ignore me and hope I go away. A long pause. You owe me, Ev. There it was, the truth beneath all the performances. I deserve what you have. My heart thudded once, hard, like a fist against bone. And then she said the exact words Jonathan predicted, words that felt eerily familiar. Derek and I have been talking, and you're making this so much worse. If you'd just signed the papers? I stepped back from the door. Papers? What papers? My phone vibrated in my pocket. Grace, I answered quietly, whispering into the phone as Lydia continued her monologue outside. She's here. Don't open the door, Grace said immediately. I won't. What's she saying? That I owe her, that I should have signed papers. Derek's involved. Grace swore under her breath. She's rehearsing this. She's not talking to you. She's practicing her version of events for whoever will listen later. That hit me like a rush of ice. Outside, Lydia's tone shifted again. Ev, I'm tired. I don't want this to get ugly. Come on, just open the door. Behind her words, desperation throbbed like a bruise. "I know you're mad," she continued, "but you're also being selfish. You don't get to hoard everything. It's not fair." Not fair. That phrase had haunted childhood arguments, teenage jealousy, adult rivalry. It was Lydia's mantra, her identity, her justification. She stepped back from the door. "Fine," she said. "If you want to act this way, go ahead. But Derek says we have options. And once the lawyer files everything, don't expect me to feel guilty." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone harder. Grace whispered, "This is escalating exactly like emotional extortion cases I've seen. She's not trying to reason with you. She's conditioning you." "I know," I whispered. Lydia knocked one last time, not hard, but insistently. "I'll be back in the morning, and maybe by then you'll have calmed down." When she finally left, her footsteps retreating down the walkway, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My hands were trembling from the adrenaline, but the shaking wasn't just fear. It was anger. Because the sister who was supposed to protect me growing up was now the person I had to protect myself from. And no matter how many cupcakes she held or memories she invoked, the truth was undeniable. Lydia wanted my life, and she wanted it legally. After I hung up with Grace, I sank into the kitchen chair again. The house hummed with the aftershock of her visit. I opened my laptop and placed another entry into my log. Every word she'd said, every shift in tone, every threat masked as concern. When I finished typing, I sat in the quiet, staring at the reflection of my own tired face in the darkened window. That was when I remembered the smart lock log from earlier. I pulled it up again, scrolling through the failed login attempts. 7 attempts? 7. But something else caught my eye. The attempts were made using a 6-digit code I recognized. My old birthday, not the one I used now, the one Lydia always forgot growing up. A chill swept over me. She hadn't guessed the code randomly. She had been trying to get into my house. In the middle of the night. I closed my eyes, my breath shaky but controlled, because now everything was clear. This wasn't a sibling dispute. It was premeditated. It was coordinated. It was invasive. And as terrifying as that was, it also crystallized something strong and sharp inside me. Lydia thought she could push me, corner me, intimidate me into giving her everything. But she had underestimated the one thing she never bothered to understand. I didn't build my life by accident. I built it by surviving. Tonight was the last night I would allow Lydia or Derek, or any version of them, to control the narrative. Because tomorrow, I wouldn't just defend myself. I'd start fighting back. I woke before my alarm, the thin gray light of morning stretching across my ceiling like a warning. I hadn't slept. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Lydia's voice outside my door, felt her pounding on the wood, imagined her slipping through the dark with the determination of someone who believed nothing could stop her. But now morning had come, and with it, the promise of clarity, or at least the illusion of it. I sat up slowly, pulling the blanket off my legs, and listened for any sound inside or outside my home. Nothing. The neighborhood was still. The air was heavy. And today, Jonathan had asked me to record everything, every interaction, every word, every movement Lydia made. I intended to obey. By 8, I had showered, dressed, and tied my hair back into a tight ponytail. Not because it mattered what I looked like, but because I needed to feel contained, prepared. My hands shook slightly when I brewed coffee, but that was nothing new these days. Then my phone vibrated with a text. "I'll stop by later. We need to finish our conversation." L, no apology, no explanation, no hesitation. My chest tightened, but I inhaled slowly and exhaled through my nose. She was predictable now. Desperation made people predictable. That was her mistake. I opened a new note on my phone and entered the time, date, message, and the way my stomach clenched at the idea of seeing her again. Jonathan had said emotional context mattered too. "It shows intent," he'd explained last night. It shows coercion. I was preparing for war. At 9, I left for work. Every movement, locking the door, checking the garage, adjusting my security cameras, felt like a ritual of self-defense. On the drive, my eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, half expecting Derek's car to appear behind me. But the road stayed empty. Work was a welcome distraction. Or it should have been. But after 2 hours of reading contracts and zoning ordinances, I realized I'd reread the same sentence 10 times without absorbing any of it. My mind kept drifting, circling the same questions like a vulture. How long had Lydia been planning everything? Had Derek started this, or had she sought him out because she needed someone who validated her entitlement? What exactly did those papers look like? And what would they do next now that I refused to play their game? The uncertainty gnawed at me. A little after noon, I slipped into a conference room with smoked glass walls for privacy, pulled out my phone, and called the locksmith again. "Could you check whether anyone attempted to tamper with the new locks?" I asked. "I know it sounds paranoid, but—" "It's not paranoid," he interrupted gently. "Break-ins by people who think they're entitled to a property happens more than you think. I'll send someone to inspect the frame and hardware today." Relief slipped through me like warm air. "Thank you." Next, I called Jonathan. He answered with the crisp sharpness of someone already 3 steps ahead. "Evelyn," he said. "Talk to me." "Lydia texted," I said. "She's coming back today." "Then today is when we stop observing and start collecting," he said. "Record her, video and audio if possible. If you can safely capture her tone, frustration, anger, insistence, that will help establish coercive patterning." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "And if she brings Derek?" "You record both," he said. "But under no circumstances do you speak to him. He is the more dangerous one because he believes he is the most rational." My stomach twisted. She mentioned papers again. "I expected that." His voice hardened. "They're trying to trap you into signing something under emotional duress. They will present it as reasonable. They will speak as though they're protecting your interests. But Evelyn, do not, under any circumstance, touch those documents." "I won't," I whispered. "Good," he said. "And one more thing. If they escalate today, and I believe they might, do not answer the door. But do watch, do listen, and document." I promised him I would. When I ended the call, I sat there in silence, hands on the conference table, fingers trembling against the polished glass. I had never imagined I'd be spending my lunch break planning how to defend myself against my own sister. But there I was, and there was no turning back. I left early that day. By 2:30, I was back home, sitting in my living room with every curtain drawn. The quiet tick of the clock on the wall echoed through the house. I tried to keep myself busy, organizing documents, labeling files, checking the smart lock log. But a knot of dread tightened with every passing moment. Then, at 3:12, my doorbell rang. Not the soft chime from last night. This one blared through the house like an alarm. My heart slammed against my ribs. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and crept toward the peephole. There she was. Lydia stood on my porch wearing a fitted gray blazer and black pants, her hair pinned neatly back. She looked like someone applying for a job she believed was already hers. But her expression, sharp, calculated, told me she wasn't here for negotiation. She was here for acquisition. Behind her stood Derek, arms crossed, jaw tight, a leather folder tucked under his arm like a weapon. They looked like a corporate duo, a hostile takeover. I stayed silent. Lydia knocked again, harder. "Ev, I know you're home." Her voice carried through the door, harder than yesterday but steadier too, practiced. "We need to talk, now." No, we didn't. Derek stepped closer. "Evelyn, this is counterproductive. Let's handle this like civilized adults." I almost laughed. Civilized adults didn't try to steal their sister's house. Lydia tried again. "Ev, open the door and let's settle this privately. You're making this harder." My phone recorded everything. Her tone, her insistence, the rising impatience. After a minute of silence, she let out a forced sigh. "Okay," she said. "If you won't open the door, then we'll just go ahead and review everything out here." I leaned closer to the peephole. She turned to Derek and said loudly, "Show me the forms again." Forms. Papers she planned to trick me into signing. Derek opened the leather folder, flipping through pages with crisp, audible snaps. I couldn't see the documents clearly through the peephole, but I heard enough. "These are the transfer authorizations," he said. "House title, vehicle ownership, asset access documents." My breath stalled. Lydia nodded, as if discussing a wedding seating chart rather than the dismantling of my life. "So, once she signs these, everything moves under my name?" "Yes," Derek confirmed. "We'll position it as financial protection. She'll feel obligated." Obligated. My fingers clenched around my phone. "And if she refuses?" Lydia asked. Derek's smirk was visible even through the blurred fisheye lens. "Then we escalate. Pressure. Threat of legal filing. Maybe even a family mediation notice if we need to rattle her." Rattle me. They planned to rattle me. Lydia exhaled like someone rehearsing a speech. "I can get her to sign. She just needs to hear it framed correctly." "You need to push harder," Derek said. "She's resisting because she thinks she's the only one entitled to the family legacy." Legacy? I nearly choked. We had no inheritance, no shared assets. Our mother died with nothing but a small life insurance policy which Lydia had already spent. "What about the HOA thing?" Lydia asked suddenly. "Did they respond?" "They will," Derek said with confidence. "They always do. Once they think you're a co-owner, it'll be easier." I closed my eyes, bile rising in my throat. They weren't just trying to take my assets. They were building a false reality around them, a scaffolding of lies, repetition, and pressure until they wore me down. Lydia wasn't the mastermind. Derek was. But she was a willing accomplice. Lydia knocked again. "Ev, if you're listening, please understand that this is better handled now, before lawyers get involved, before this becomes messy." It was already messy. It had been messy since the moment she started researching my HOA. When I still didn't answer, Lydia's voice cracked. Not with sorrow, but with annoyance. "I can't believe you're doing this over a house." A house. A house. As if I hadn't poured 10 years of my life into it. As if she hadn't been planning to ambush me with paperwork in my own home. I stepped back from the door, breathing carefully through the tremors. Then Derek said the words that made the room tilt. "We should catch her off guard. Find a moment where she's not being so stubborn." Lydia hummed thoughtfully. "Maybe when she comes home one day. Or if she lets me inside again." My skin crawled. He continued, "People let their guard down eventually. Not this time. Not ever again." Finally, after several more attempts to coax me out, they left. But not before Lydia leaned close to the door and whispered, "You can't hide from your own family." Her voice was poison. When their footsteps finally faded, I let out a shuddering breath and pressed stop on my recording. The silence that followed wasn't relief. It was resolve. They thought they were tightening a trap. But they didn't realize I was building one of my own. Jonathan would get the audio, the video, the full account, every recorded threat, every moment of coercion. They had no idea they had just given me the ammunition I needed. No idea I had finally stopped thinking like the sister they could manipulate. Now I was thinking like a woman preparing to dismantle the people who mistook her kindness for weakness. And I would, piece by piece, word by word, law by law. Tomorrow the tide would turn. And Lydia wasn't ready for the storm she had created. I didn't leave the house for the rest of the evening after Lydia and Derek left my porch. The adrenaline crash hit me like a wave. My hands trembling, my vision swimming briefly as if my body had finally realized I had survived something I wasn't prepared to face. I locked the door, fastened the chain, and stood there with my forehead pressed against the solid wood for 3 full breaths. When I finally stepped back, the house felt different. No longer simply mine, but something I needed to defend. The atmosphere inside was taut, almost electric, as though every light, every shadow carried the memory of voices outside my door. And beneath it all, another realization simmered quietly. This wasn't the end of their push. It was the beginning. I walked straight to my home office, turned on my desk lamp, and pulled out my notebook. The log had grown from a few entries to pages filled with dates, quotes, observations, timestamps. Every detail mattered now. Tone, timing, escalation pattern. Jonathan would need everything, and I planned to give it to him neatly, cleanly, indisputably. I wrote until my hand cramped. When my phone buzzed, I flinched hard. I expected Lydia again, but the name on the screen made my breath release all at once. Grace, I'm on my way. Don't argue. I didn't. 15 minutes later, she arrived, wrapped in an oversized gray hoodie, no makeup, hair piled on her head like she'd thrown it up mid-sprint. She stepped inside without waiting for me to finish unlocking the door. You look like you haven't breathed in 6 hours, she said. Maybe I haven't. I brought dinner, she added, lifting a brown bag as if it were a shield. But you're probably too nauseous to eat, so I also brought wine. She dropped her bag on the kitchen counter and immediately went to check the locks herself. I didn't blame her. When she was satisfied every entry point was fortified, she motioned for me to sit. Walk me through everything, she said. And I did. Every word Lydia had said, every smirk from Derek, every clip of audio Jonathan told me to capture. Grace listened without interrupting, but her expression grew tighter with each detail. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. Ev, this is coordinated. It's not just entitlement anymore. It's strategy. I know. You have to get ahead of them. I know. And not just with locks and recordings, she continued. Your sister is rewriting your reality to everyone she talks to. You have to tighten your circle. My circle? I asked. She nodded. Anyone who might believe her, anyone she could manipulate, anyone who has access to you or your property, and, God, I hate saying this, anyone she could use to corner you emotionally. The implication settled over me like a shadow. You think she'll go after Mom's friends? Or yours? Grace didn't sugarcoat. She never did. Look, I know this hurts, but people who feel entitled don't limit their tactics to logic. They go after pressure points. Pressure points. Lydia knew all of mine. I walked to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. What am I supposed to do? Send a memo telling everyone in my life that my sister is trying to legally steal my property? No, Grace said. But you can call the ones who matter, the ones who might be confused if she starts twisting the story. You tell them, please direct any questions to my attorney. I cannot discuss family matters right now. And then you stop explaining yourself. Her tone was firm, but her eyes were soft. Ev, stop giving her the benefit of compassion she's not giving you. I braced myself against the counter, my head bowed. I keep thinking she'll regret this, that she'll realize what she's doing is insane, that she'll remember that you're her sister, Grace finished gently. Ev, she already remembers that. She just doesn't care. The truth hit harder than I expected. I wiped my face with a towel, pressing it to my eyes until the fabric absorbed the sting behind them. I hated crying, especially over Lydia, especially now. When I pulled the towel away, Grace was watching me with that look, the one that meant she was about to say something bold, something she knew I needed but might not want to hear. She expects you to fold, Grace said. You always saved her. You always fixed things. She's depending on the past version of you. She doesn't know this version, I whispered. Grace smiled grimly. Good, don't introduce her. The doorbell suddenly chimed. We both froze. My pulse spiked instantly, dread slamming into me so fast my breath caught. The elegant, soft chime felt sinister despite its gentleness. Grace held up her hand, signaling me to stay back, and crept toward the peephole. She looked for a long moment. Then her shoulders relaxed, slightly. "It's just a delivery guy," she whispered. "Food." "Food? I didn't order anything." Grace checked the porch again. "It's a box, medium-sized, no logo." My stomach churned. That's not a good sign. "Could be a neighbor mix-up," she said slowly, but her voice lacked conviction. Or... She didn't need to finish. I walked to the peephole myself. A cardboard box sat on my porch, plain, taped, with my name written in thick black marker. Evelyn Hart. Nothing else. No return address. My phone vibrated. A new message. "Did you get my gift?" I almost dropped the phone. Grace grabbed my arm. "Ev, don't open that box." "I'm not planning to." She ushered me back from the door, then locked every bolt again with trembling hands. "Call Jonathan," she said. "Now." As I dialed him, something inside me slid into place. Not fear, but clarity. Whatever was inside that box wasn't a peace offering. It was a statement, a pressure tactic, an intimidation attempt disguised as thoughtfulness. Jonathan answered on the third ring. "Evelyn?" "She left something at my door," I said, voice thin, tight. "A box, with my name on it." "Do not open it," he said instantly. "Call the non-emergency line for local police, ask them to document it, and keep the box outside your door until they arrive." Grace nodded vigorously beside me. Jonathan continued, "This behavior is escalating more quickly than anticipated. She's not just threatening legal action, she's attempting psychological destabilization." "Intimidation," I whispered. "Yes," Jonathan said, "and that means she's losing control of her narrative. People escalate when they're afraid they're running out of options." I went still. "So this is desperation?" "In part," he said. "But don't underestimate her. Desperation can make people unpredictable." When I hung up, Grace squeezed my shoulder. "Call the police, then we wait." I did. An officer arrived 20 minutes later, took one look at the box, asked a few questions, then photographed it from every angle. When he carefully slid it open, I stepped back further, gripping the doorframe hard enough my knuckles whitened. Inside were papers, dozens of them. All printed copies of property transfer forms, quitclaim deed templates, general durable power of attorney packets, and handwritten notes in Lydia's familiar script. On top lay a single sheet in her flawless cursive. "Sign these, and all our problems go away." My knees nearly buckled. The officer glanced at me, sympathetic but professionally detached. "Ma'am, do you feel threatened by your sister?" My breath trembled before I could steady it. "Yes," I said, "I do." He nodded. "Document everything, and don't answer the door for her. People who use intimidation tactics rarely stop after one try." Grace wrapped her arm around me after the officer left, her voice soft but steady. "Ev, she's not acting like your sister. She's acting like a predator." "I know," I whispered. "I just don't understand how it got this far." Grace squeezed me tighter. "Maybe you don't need to understand. Maybe you just need to protect yourself." I nodded slowly. I knew she was right. Later that night, after Grace had gone home and I had cleaned up the kitchen as a way to quiet the tremor in my hands, I sat alone in my living room staring at the stack of documents the officer left on my table. Evidence. That's what Jonathan would call it. Evidence of coercion, of entitlement, of deliberate psychological manipulation. I didn't cry, I didn't panic, I didn't shake. Instead, something inside me solidified. This was no longer about fear. This was about fight. And I intended to win. Tomorrow, Lydia would come again. But tomorrow I wouldn't be the same woman she left trembling behind a locked door. Tomorrow, I would be ready. I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in days. It wasn't confidence, no, not yet, but something sharper, something forged from necessity rather than courage. I moved through the house with a steadiness that surprised even me. Every switch flipped, every lock checked, every piece of evidence gathered felt like steps toward reclaiming the ground Lydia had been trying so hard to shake beneath my feet. By the time I finished organizing the files Lydia sent in her gift, it was nearly noon. My phone buzzed every so often, but I ignored all numbers I didn't recognize. Grace checked in twice, Jonathan once, and the locksmith messaged to confirm he'd reinforce my backdoor deadbolt that afternoon. I replied to each, my responses clipped but grateful. My mind had already moved to preparation. Today was not about fear, today was about strategy. At 1:30 the doorbell rang again, just one chime. I stiffened, but when I looked through the peephole, it wasn't Lydia. It was a delivery worker balancing a stack of certified envelopes. My pulse dipped with dread. I cracked the door open 2 inches, the chain still secured. "Who are they from?" He said, scanning the labels. "All from a law firm, Brennan and Tate." I almost laughed. Of course. Lydia and Derek were efficient, if nothing else. "You can leave them on the mat," I said. He set them down and walked away without another look. When the door was closed again, I stared at the envelopes like they were venomous snakes. I didn't touch them. Instead, I photographed each one, their return addresses, their timestamps. Then I slid them into a large plastic evidence bag and placed them with everything else: letters, notes, screenshots. The last thing I needed was to be accused of tampering. At 2, Jonathan called. "I assume you received the envelopes?" he said. "I didn't open them." "Good," he replied, "because they are likely intentionally inflammatory, designed to scare you, designed to provoke a response. Do not respond." "I wasn't planning to," he continued. "I've drafted a formal advisory letter stating all communication must go through my office from now on. No visits, no calls, no texts. Once they receive it, anything further becomes harassment." "I appreciate it," I said softly. "And Evelyn," he added, voice gentler, "you're doing remarkably well under pressure. I know this is difficult," I swallowed. "It's not the legal part that hurts, it's her." "I know," he repeated, "but you can grieve later. For now, you protect yourself." After the call, I sat in the quiet for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle in my chest. Then I stood. Action helped, movement helped. And there was more to prepare. By late afternoon, the locksmith had reinforced the doors, adjusted the hinges, and installed new tamper-resistant hardware. "Whoever's trying to get in," he said, tightening the last bolt, "is going to have a long night." "Good. Let them try." After he left, I curled up on the couch with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the sky turn dusky pink through my partially drawn curtains. My house felt different now, fortified, guarded, but the tension still clung to the air like thick humidity. At 6, my phone rang again. "Grace." "Ev," she said, not bothering with hello. "I need you to listen carefully. Someone from your sister's social circle is posting cryptic things online." "What kind of things?" "That she's fighting for what she deserves, that you're hoarding family assets, that you owe her more than you've given." My blood chilled. "She's painting me as the villain." "She's controlling the narrative," Grace corrected, "because she knows you won't." For a moment I couldn't speak. Betrayal twisted deeper. Not just that she was trying to take everything, but that she wanted to be seen as the wounded one while doing it. Grace lowered her voice. "Ev, she's telling people you locked her out of her rightful home." My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. This wasn't just coercion. It was character assassination. "I need to go," I whispered. "I need to think." "Ev..." But I had already ended the call. I stood and paced the living room, my fingers curling into fists. Lydia wasn't just pushing me. She was smearing me. She was building a story she expected people to believe, a story where she was the grieving sister and I was the cold-hearted hoarder of wealth. But the truth? She hadn't lifted a finger to build anything. She floated through life while I worked 80-hour weeks. I'd saved for years to afford this house. I'd sacrificed sleep, vacation time, relationships, joy, everything, to create financial stability for myself. And now she wanted to claim that stability as her own. I walked into my office again, opened the evidence folder, and flipped through my notes. With each page, my resolve thickened. Lydia could lie online, manipulate friends, push false narratives, but she couldn't rewrite recorded audio or documented harassment or photographs or security logs. The truth had weight, and I was collecting all of it. By 7:30, I'd turned on every exterior light and triple-checked every lock again. Then I made tea and sat in the dim glow of my living room, waiting. Not in fear, but in expectation. Lydia always came back after dark. And tonight, after sending envelopes and airing grievances online, she'd be restless. She'd want to confront me, to corner me. I wasn't wrong. At 8, the motion sensor on my porch lit up. My heart thumped once, steady, heavy, and I rose from the couch. I stayed 5 feet from the door as I checked the live camera feed. Lydia stood there alone. She looked different tonight, more disheveled, more frantic. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, her lipstick smudged, her blouse wrinkled as though she'd been pacing for hours. She paced now too, back and forth, muttering to herself until she stopped dead in front of my door. Then she started pounding, not knocking, pounding. "Evelyn!" she screamed. "Open the door!" I stayed silent. "Stop hiding!" she shouted, pounding harder with each word. "You can't do this to me! You can't just lock me out!" My camera picked up every word, every frantic breath. She switched tactics abruptly, her voice transforming into a sob. "Ev, please, I need you." She slid down the door until she was sitting on my porch, hands covering her face. Her shoulders shook, but the sound of her crying felt performative, overly loud, as if she wanted the entire neighborhood to witness her pain. Then she whispered something that made my breath stop. "I don't have anywhere else to go. Derek kicked me out." A cold ripple went down my spine. Was it true? Or another manipulation? Another ploy to get me to open the door? Either way, I didn't move. She looked up suddenly, eyes gleaming with something sharp, something far too deliberate to be grief. "I know you're watching me," she said. "I know you can hear me." She crawled toward the camera, peering directly into it. "You think you're safe behind your little locks?" Her tone twisted into something venomous. "You're not." I felt the air leave my lungs. She whispered again, softer, more dangerous than yelling. "You owe me, and I will get what I'm owed." She stood abruptly, brushed her hair back, and walked off the porch with a strange, eerie calm. As she stepped into the yard, she spoke without turning around. "We'll do this my way." The camera feed followed her until she reached the sidewalk and disappeared into the shadows. I waited 15 minutes before exhaling. The quiet returned like a blanket being pulled over the house. My tea had gone cold. My hands were trembling again. But beneath that tremor was something stronger, an unshakable certainty that Lydia had crossed a final line tonight. Not just with me, not just with the law, but with herself. She'd become someone unrecognizable, someone hollowed out by entitlement and fueled by Derek's manipulations, and that meant I needed to escalate too. I grabbed my phone, pulled up Jonathan's number, and sent him the video. Then I wrote a message beneath it. "It's time. Tell me what to do next." I didn't sleep at all after sending Jonathan the video. Instead, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying Lydia's voice over and over, the venom in her tone, the way she'd hissed, "You're not safe behind your little locks." Every word had burrowed into my chest like a splinter. By dawn, I wasn't sure if the ache beneath my ribs was fear or anticipation, but whichever it was, it kept me painfully awake. Just after 8, Jonathan called. "Evelyn," he said in that calm, steel-edged tone I'd come to rely on, "I've reviewed your recordings, all of them." I sat on the edge of my bed, blanket wrapped tightly around my shoulders. "And your sister has placed herself in a legally precarious position," he said. "Trespassing, harassment, coercion, attempted intimidation. She has built a timeline of behavior that, should we need to escalate, will serve you very well." My throat tightened. "What now?" "We move from defense to structure," he said. "Everything you've documented has value, but now we need corroboration. Someone who has witnessed her patterns before. Someone who can testify to her intentions." "Someone like who?" "That," he said, "is exactly what I want to discuss. Think carefully. Is there anyone who's seen your sister's behavior worsen over time? Anyone she's confided in? Anyone who has expressed concerns about Derek's influence?" I thought of our cousin Mara, how Lydia had stopped talking to her after a fight about money. I thought of Lydia's old roommate who'd accused her of stealing rent. I thought of our mother's friend, Helen, who once told me Lydia reminded her too much of my father's worst traits. But then something else surfaced. Someone recent. Someone close enough to see the rot beneath the surface. "Her co-worker," I whispered. Jonathan paused. "Which one?" "Her supervisor from the boutique," I said. "I've only met her twice, but the second time she pulled me aside and asked if Lydia was okay. She didn't give details, but she said Lydia made some bold claims about coming into wealth soon." Jonathan hummed thoughtfully. "Interesting. Reach out. Don't discuss legal issues, just ask if she'd be willing to talk about your sister's recent behavior." I nodded, gripping my phone tighter. "And Evelyn," he added, voice softening, "today I want you to back up everything again. Create redundant storage, off-site and encrypted, and start preparing for the possibility that your sister may attempt something public." That word hit differently. "Public?" "Yes," he said. "Social media, employers, mutual connections. Individuals like your sister often escalate from physical presence to reputation attacks." My stomach dropped. She was already planting seeds online. Grace had shown me. Lydia would absolutely make a scene if she thought she could control the narrative. "I'll prepare," I whispered. "Good," Jonathan replied. "Call me as soon as you speak to the co-worker." When the call ended, I didn't move for a moment. Morning sun was beginning to warm the walls, but I still felt cold. I wrapped the blanket tighter, stood and walked to the kitchen like someone moving through underwater currents. A cup of coffee helped, but only slightly. At 10:30, with trembling fingers, I found the boutique's number and asked to speak with Maya, Lydia's supervisor. Her voice came on the line, warm but cautious. "Hello?" "Hi, Maya. It's Evelyn. I hope I'm not interrupting." "Oh, Evelyn." She sounded genuinely surprised. "Hi, is everything okay?" No, nothing was okay. "Actually, I'm hoping you can help me with something. It's about Lydia." There was a long exhale. I thought this might be about her. My pulse quickened. "Has something happened?" "Well," she said carefully, "I can't share anything confidential, of course, but I can say that Lydia's behavior has raised concerns." "What kind of concerns?" I asked. She hesitated. "May I ask why you're reaching out?" "My sister has been trying to take control of my assets," I said quietly. "House, car, savings. She's been escalating. Threats, manipulation, showing up at my door with a lawyer. And I'm trying to understand how long she's been planning this." Another long silence. "Evelyn," Maya said finally, "I think we should meet in person. There are things I'm not comfortable saying over the phone." My heart thudded. "Are you free this afternoon?" she asked. "Yes," I said immediately. 2:00. There's a quiet cafe on 5th and San Gabriel. I'll be there." "I'll come," I whispered. When I hung up, my palms were damp. Something about Maya's tone, cautious, almost frightened, told me this meeting would not bring comfort. It would bring truth, and truth rarely came without cost. I spent the next hours documenting everything Jonathan advised. Backups, timestamps, encrypted folders, screenshots. I worked mechanically, my brain focused only on the next step, and the next, like someone laying bricks across a collapsing bridge. At 1:45, I grabbed my keys and left my house, locking each door twice before backing out of the driveway. The cafe was 10 minutes away, small and tucked between a bookstore and an art framing shop. Quiet, Safe, neutral ground. Maya was already inside, seated at a corner table with a mug of tea clasped in both hands. She looked tired, more tired than a woman in her early 30s should look on a Tuesday afternoon. Her shoulders slumped when she saw me. "Evelyn," she said, rising to greet me. "Thank you for meeting me." We sat, and the silence between us felt heavy, swollen with unspoken things. Finally, Maya leaned forward. "Before I say anything, I need to know, are you safe?" I blinked. "What?" "You and your property," she clarified. "Are you safe right now?" I think so," I said. "I've taken precautions." She nodded, but worry clouded her eyes. "Good, because Lydia has not been stable, and Derek is influencing her in ways that are genuinely frightening." My pulse raced. "Tell me." Maya glanced around the cafe, then lowered her voice. "For months, Lydia has been talking about a windfall she was expecting. She didn't say from where at first, just that someone close to her would finally do the right thing." My stomach twisted. "She bragged," Maya continued, "about soon owning a house, a luxury one. She said she'd redecorate the entire thing, maybe flip it for profit, maybe use it as collateral for Derek's investment projects." My breath hitched. "She said your house was hers," Maya added bluntly. "Repeatedly." My vision blurred for a second. There it was. Confirmation. Lydia hadn't snapped overnight. She had been planting this delusion, nurturing it, building her entitlement like scaffolding. "And," Maya's voice softened, "she showed me documents, printed forms, templates for asset transfer. She said Derek helped her fill them out. She said you were dragging your feet about giving her ownership, but that she'd make you understand." My chest tightened painfully. "Did she say how?" "Yes," Maya whispered. "She said, people give in when you apply the right pressure." Pressure. The same word Derek used. The room blurred, then snapped back into focus. "Why are you telling me this?" I whispered. "Because," Maya said gently, "I think she's unraveling. And I think Derek is encouraging it. And I think you're in danger, not physically, but legally, emotionally, financially. Emotionally, financially." Lydia was attacking from every angle. "She's been lying to people," Maya added. "Telling them you promised her the house, that you owe her, that you're holding on to wealth that should be shared. She's painting you as the selfish one." "I know," I whispered. Maya reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Evelyn, this isn't just entitlement. This is obsession. She's built an entire narrative around your assets. She talks about them like they've already been transferred, like she's already living there." A shiver ran through me. I thought of the smart lock attempts, the notes, the lawyer, the late-night visit. This wasn't just a grab for money. This was a claim on my life, a claim on my identity, a claim on my home. Maya's voice trembled as she continued. "Whatever you're doing to protect yourself, keep doing it. Multiply it. And for what it's worth, I'm willing to put my concerns in writing if your attorney needs them." I swallowed hard. "Thank you." When we stood to leave, Maya pulled me into a hug, quick, tight, almost maternal. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I wish she were someone who could love you enough to let you be safe." When she walked away, I sat back down for a moment, gripping the edge of the table. My sister had not simply crossed a line. She had demolished it, burned it, sprinted across the ashes. As I drove home, the cafe conversation echoed in my mind with every passing streetlight. And when I stepped into my house, the quiet inside no longer felt fragile. It felt like resolve. The next move was mine. And Lydia had no idea what was coming. I drove home from the cafe with both hands clenched around the steering wheel, knuckles pale, the world outside my windshield passing in a blur of sunlight and motion. Maya's words replayed in my mind like a looping reel, Lydia bragging about coming into wealth, claiming she already owned my home, showing printed transfer documents to her coworkers as if they were wedding invitations. Every detail lodged deeper into my chest, confirming what I had been trying not to believe. She wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't emotional. She was planning, and Derek was the architect. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the late afternoon sun had dipped behind a cloud, and my house cast a long shadow across the yard. It looked unfamiliar, beautiful and well kept as always, but suddenly like something precarious, like something someone else was trying to pry out of my hands. I walked inside, locked the door, and leaned against it, letting myself breathe in slow, controlled intervals until my pulse eased back from its frantic pace. My phone buzzed. A text from Jonathan. "Excellent work today. Everything Maya said is extremely helpful. We need to move to phase 2. Call me when you're home." I hit call. He answered immediately. "Good. You're safe?" "Yes." "Now listen closely," he said. "Your sister is escalating faster than expected. Her mental framework around the property has shifted from desire to entitlement. She believes she is owed what you have. That makes her dangerous, not physically perhaps, but legally and socially." I exhaled shakily. Maya confirmed she's been telling people she already owns my home. "That aligns with individuals operating under entitlement delusion," Jonathan replied. "Our next step is reinforcing your legal shield before Lydia attempts a more public maneuver." I swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means you and I are going to secure your property, assets, and reputation before she can fabricate claims," he said. "I'll need full documentation, not just the recordings, but every financial detail Lydia could twist. You need to gather it tonight." "Tonight?" "Yes," Jonathan said. "She and Derek will not slow down. They will escalate again, possibly soon." As if summoned by his words, my doorbell chimed at that exact moment. I froze. "Oh God," I whispered. "Is someone there?" Jonathan's voice sharpened. The chime sounded again, polite, patient, but unmistakably deliberate. I crept toward the peephole, and my blood ran cold. Lydia. Again. But she wasn't alone. 2 women stood behind her. Women I recognized. Mrs. Hanley, our mother's old friend, the one Lydia always manipulated with crocodile tears. And beside her, Mrs. Doyle, our neighbor from 2 doors down, a woman whose entire personality was built on gossip and sympathy for the loudest sufferer. My stomach dropped. Lydia wasn't just escalating, she was staging a scene. "Jonathan," I whispered. "She brought people, she brought witnesses." He inhaled sharply. "Evelyn, listen to me. Do not open the door. Record everything. They are attempting social pressure escalation." "I know," I whispered. "Stay quiet," he urged. "Let them talk." So I did. Lydia stepped forward, arranging her face into a tragic expression so dramatic it would have made a soap actress proud. "Ev," she said, loud enough for the street to hear, "please open the door. I brought some of Mom's friends to help mediate. We're worried about you." Worried about me? Mrs. Hanley clasped her hands together. "Dear, your sister says you've been refusing to speak with her, that your grief over your mother has isolated you. We just want to help." Anger flared in my chest. Lydia had used our mother's memory as a weapon before, but never like this. Lydia's voice took on a trembling edge. "Ev, I don't want us to fight, and I don't want you to lose everything Mom wanted for us." Lose everything? My jaw clenched. Mrs. Doyle chimed in, her tone sympathetic and cutting at the same time. "She's worried you've become overly attached to the house, possessive. That's not healthy, dear. Family property should be shared." Shared. My mind reeled. Lydia had fed them her script, word for word, and now they were here to shame me into compliance. Behind the door, Jonathan murmured, "Record every word." Lydia placed her palm against the door like she was blessing it. "Ev, please, just let us in so we can talk. This is embarrassing for everyone." Embarrassing for everyone. My breath shook. I stayed silent. Lydia took a step back, sighing loudly for her audience. "She's shutting me out again. She's been so unstable lately. Derek keeps saying she's becoming paranoid, but I didn't want to believe him. My mouth fell open. Mrs. Hanley gasped softly. Paranoid? Oh dear. Yes, Lydia said, her voice faux fragile. She's convinced I'm trying to take her things. I mean, can you imagine? Her own sister? I nearly choked on my disbelief. This was calculated character assassination. She wasn't just attacking my rights, she was attacking my sanity. That's it, Jonathan whispered. You have more than enough. Don't engage. But Lydia wasn't done. She took another deep breath and raised her voice. Ev, if you won't let me in, please at least tell us you're okay. You've been ignoring calls, isolating yourself, acting erratically. We're worried you're having some kind of breakdown. Mrs. Doyle nodded. It happens to women under stress. No shame in it. Something inside me snapped. Not rage, not tears, clarity. If I opened that door now, Lydia would twist anything I said. She wanted a meltdown. She wanted an outburst. She wanted a spectacle she could describe later as proof. I stepped away from the door. Lydia knocked once more. Ev, please, don't make us call someone to come check on you. Call someone, meaning welfare checks, meaning false reports, meaning escalating her smear campaign with authorities if needed. I walked to my kitchen, grabbed my phone charger, and whispered into the phone, Jonathan, what do I do if she calls the police with a false report? Stay calm. Show them your documentation, your log, your cameras. They cannot force entry without cause. I nodded slowly, even though my pulse thudded in my ears. Outside, Lydia said something to the women in a lowered voice, then added loudly, I can't stay any longer. Maybe she'll open up tomorrow. Let's go. She made sure her grief-filled sigh echoed through my doorway before she left. When they were gone, I locked the deadbolt again, then slid down the wall until I sat on the floor breathing hard, not crying, not shaking, just stunned. Jonathan waited patiently on the line. This was expected behavior, he finally said. Social witnesses create pressure. They validate her narrative. But Evelyn, what she just did also becomes evidence of attempted manipulation. Do you really think she'll take this to the police? I whispered. Yes, he said simply. Prepare for that possibility, and prepare to document it too. We ended the call with a plan. Gather all digital files into a master folder, back it up externally, and be ready to forward the entire collection to him at a moment's notice. I stood slowly, then walked through my house gathering what I needed: USB drives, my laptop, binders, printed logs. As I assembled everything, the details of the encounter replayed in my mind. My sister had effectively staged an intervention to steal my home. She had dragged neighbors and family friends into her delusion. She had accused me of instability. She had crafted a facade of concern so perfectly rehearsed it chilled me. This wasn't impulsive entitlement. This was an orchestrated campaign. And in that moment, something inside me hardened with a strength I didn't know I had. She wasn't going to take my house. She wasn't going to take my car. She wasn't going to take my savings. She wasn't going to take my reputation. She wasn't going to take anything. When the documentation was finished, copies made, files encrypted, logs updated, I stepped outside to get some air. The sun was setting, soft orange hues painting the sky. For a moment, the quiet was almost peaceful. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You humiliated me today. This is getting ugly because you're forcing it to. Tomorrow will be different. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Then I lifted my phone and hit record again. Because tomorrow Lydia would cross another line. And tomorrow I would be ready to end this. I didn't know what I expected to find when I opened my email that Monday morning, but it certainly wasn't a formal letter from a law office I'd never heard of. The subject line alone made my stomach drop. Notice of intent to pursue civil action. Lydia Hart vs. Evelyn Hart. For a moment I just stared at it, my cursor hovering like my hand wasn't willing to click. A part of me hoped it was a prank or a scare tactic or something Lydia had drafted herself using an online template. But when I finally opened it, dread washed through me like cold water. Her attorney, a man named Roland Brewer, someone with a reputation for taking any case he could monetize, outlined Lydia's claims. According to him, I had unlawfully seized and disposed of shared familial property, inflicted emotional distress through exclusion, withholding communication, and financial dominance, acted with malicious intent by donating items belonging to the client, denied rightful co-ownership of the Hart family home and other inherited assets. Inherited assets. The phrase made me snort in disbelief. There was no inheritance. Our mother had rented for most of her life, left behind a beat-up sedan and a modest savings account too small to cover her medical bills. Everything I owned, I had built, I had earned, I had sacrificed for. But in Lydia's fictional universe, her curated fantasy, my home, my car, my savings were suddenly family property. Jonathan called me before I could finish reading. "I assume you just saw it," he said, voice tight with annoyance rather than concern. "I did," I said. "Is this real? Did she actually hire this man?" "She hired him, yes," Jonathan said. "But the claims? They're tissue paper. They won't hold under any legal scrutiny. This is intimidation, nothing more." "Can intimidation win?" I whispered. "In court? No," he said firmly. "But in the public eye? In your workplace? Among neighbors? That's the battlefield she's choosing. She's shifting from financial aggression to reputational warfare." "Because she's losing," I murmured. "Because she's lost," he corrected. "This letter is a tantrum wrapped in legal formatting, and we'll respond appropriately." I took a breath that felt jagged. "So, what do we do?" "We counter-strike," he said. "Not aggressively, strategically. I'll draft a response outlining the factual record, followed by notice of our intent to pursue action for attempted financial fraud, coercion, harassment, and defamation. But there's something more important." "What?" "We need a witness, someone outside your circle. Preferably someone who was present when Lydia revealed her intentions." My pulse quickened. "You mean Maya?" "Her or anyone else who Lydia confided in. The more credible the witness, the shorter this war will be." I stared at the letter again. Lydia's claims were absurd, but the fact she'd put them in writing, filed them through a lawyer, meant she was willing to burn everything down, including herself, just to wound me. "I'll reach out to Maya," I said. The rest of the morning blurred into frantic activity. Jonathan and I exchanged drafts. I organized documents, timelines, screenshots. The weight of Lydia's betrayal felt heavier than ever, not because of the claims themselves, but because she was now involving strangers, dragging professionals into her fantasy, and positioning herself as a victim I supposedly persecuted. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was Maya. "Hey," she said, sounding nervous. "I got your text. Is everything okay?" I wish I could say yes, I exhaled. "Maya, would you be willing to meet me somewhere private? There's something important I need to ask you." There was a pause. "Is this about your sister?" "Yes." Her sigh was heavy. "Then yes." "Where?" We decided on a quiet coffee shop far from Lydia's usual haunts. When I arrived, Maya was already there, twisting her cup in slow circles. "You look exhausted," she said softly. "Because I am," I admitted, "and I need your help." She nodded, bracing herself. "Tell me everything." I explained the lawsuit threat, the letter, the claims Lydia was making. As I spoke, Maya's expression shifted from concern to outrage. "She's unbelievable," she whispered. "Evelyn, she told us so many lies about you. She said you were controlling, that you bullied her financially, that you refused to share what your family left behind." "My family left nothing," I said. "You know that." "I do now," she said firmly, "but she was persuasive. She played the victim perfectly. She said you kept the house from her out of greed." My throat tightened. "Maya, I need you to testify." She didn't answer right away. My pulse drummed in my ears. Finally, her shoulders lowered with relief. Of course I will. Evelyn, I've been wanting to apologize for believing anything she said. I didn't know she was capable of all of this. She's capable, I said quietly. More than even I realized. Maya leaned forward. You said you overheard her talking about selling your house? About transferring your name off the deed? Yes, I said. You heard her refer to it as hers, right? Almost daily, Maya said. She talked like it was already legally done. She said you agreed. She said you owed her because Mom would have wanted her taken care of. She said you were selfish. And she bragged about Derek's plan to help her finally claim what she deserved. I sat perfectly still. She said that? All of it, she said. And more. Evelyn. She told us you were unstable, that you were on medication, that you were paranoid, that she was worried about you. I rubbed my forehead. She brought people to my house to stage an intervention. That must be why. That doesn't surprise me, Maya said. She's been rehearsing that story for weeks. Her support felt like a rope thrown to someone drowning. Will you speak to my attorney? I asked. Absolutely, she said. I'll do anything I can to help fix this. When we parted ways, Jonathan called again. How did it go? She agreed, I said, and she knows a lot more than I realized. Good, he said, relieved. This will turn the tide. Witness testimony is the one thing Lydia cannot twist. But he wasn't finished. There's more, he continued. I received a call from Brewer's office. They want a meeting. A meeting? I asked. What for? They want to clarify matters before proceeding formally, he said. Translation. They want to gauge whether they're walking into a losing case before Lydia wastes more money. It's a sign of desperation. My pulse quickened. Do I have to go? No, I'll go alone. You only attend if they insist, and even then we go together. But Evelyn, this is good. It means Brewer suspects she's lying. Then why take the case at all? Jonathan chuckled darkly. People lie to lawyers every day. Some lawyers care, others don't. Brewer doesn't. But even he can tell when a case is collapsing beneath his feet. And collapse it did. The next morning, Jonathan called me sounding almost amused. You'll enjoy this, he said. Brewer withdrew. My jaw fell open. What? Already? He realized Lydia has no evidence, no documentation, no legal foundation, and now, thanks to Maya, there's active witness testimony contradicting her claims. He wants nothing to do with the lawsuit. Does that mean it's over? I asked cautiously. It means the lawsuit threat is over, Jonathan said. But people like Lydia don't stop because they lost in one arena. They move to another. His prediction was accurate. That afternoon, my phone exploded with messages. Not from Lydia this time, but from acquaintances, neighbors, and distant relatives. Lydia had gone nuclear on social media. Her posts were dramatic, tear-streaked rants about being betrayed by the sister she trusted most, accusing me of manipulating her finances, isolating her emotionally, locking her out of our childhood home, discarding her belongings, contacting lawyers to silence her. The last line stung the most because it was an inverted truth. She had tried to ruin me, and now she framed my defense as aggression. Hundreds of comments poured in from her followers, friends, co-workers, strangers she'd never even met, calling me selfish, cruel, unstable, controlling. My throat tightened as I read one after another. Then a message came from someone unexpected. Margaret Keating, a senior partner at my firm. Heard what your sister posted. Don't worry, we know who you are. Come to my office when you can. When I stepped into her office later that day, Margaret didn't ask me to sit. She simply looked at me with the steady, unshakable gaze of a woman who had seen far too many stories like mine. Your sister is unraveling, she said. But you're handling this with strength most people don't have. She gestured for me to sit. Tell me everything. So I did. I told her about the threats, the staged intervention, the lawyer, the social media campaign. I told her about Derek, the crypto scheme, the entitlement that had grown like mold in the dark corners of Lydia's mind. And when I finished, Margaret spoke with a calm I desperately needed. Your sister is waging war on your stability because she cannot build her own. Women like you, women who earned everything they have, become targets for those who believe they are owed the same life without the work. I've seen it in divorces, inheritances, business disputes. It's always the same pattern. I swallowed. So what do I do now? You continue documenting. You continue protecting yourself, and you continue living, she said. Bullies want fear. Narcissists want chaos. Parasites want access. You deprive them of what they crave by refusing to collapse. She paused, then added, "And Evelyn, you have support here." The words unclenched something tight in my chest. That evening, as I drove home, a strange quiet settled over me. The world outside was still the same. Sunset stretching over the freeway, cars humming in steady lanes. But inside, something had shifted. Lydia had tried to drag me into the mud with her. She had tried to weaponize guilt, narrative, and public opinion. She had tried to rewrite reality itself. But she wasn't winning anymore. Her lawyer had walked away. Her story had holes. Her witnesses were turning into mine, and most importantly, I wasn't afraid of her anymore. When I arrived home, I stepped inside, locked the door, and let the stillness wrap around me. My house, my sanctuary, felt safe again, if only for that moment. Then my phone lit up, a message from an unknown number. But this time, it wasn't Lydia. It was Derek. "We need to talk. It's about your sister, and what she's planning next." Derek's text sat on my screen like a live wire, humming with the possibility of something explosive. For a long moment I didn't respond. I simply stood there in my entryway, purse still on my shoulder, keys in hand, the house silent around me except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. It struck me then that this was the quiet Lydia had been trying to rip away from me, the calm, the ownership, the sanctity of a space that belonged to me alone. And now her accomplice, the man who'd schemed beside her, wanted to talk. When I finally replied, my fingers moved slowly, deliberately. "Meet where?" he answered instantly. "Somewhere private. I don't want her to know." "Coffee shop on Lincoln. Back patio. 20 minutes. I didn't want to go. Every rational part of me screamed that Derek had played a role in all of this, that I owed him nothing, that this could be some twisted setup. But something about his message, its urgency, its rawness, felt different from the polished arrogance he'd displayed through Lydia. And if he was willing to break ranks now, I needed to know why. I grabbed my coat and left. The coffee shop's patio was quiet, dimly lit by hanging bulbs. Derek sat hunched over a small metal table, hands wrapped around a cup he hadn't touched. When he saw me, he startled like someone caught stealing. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice low. "Make it quick," I replied, sitting stiffly. "Why are you contacting me?" He exhaled shakily. "Because I'm done with your sister, and because she's planning something that's going to hurt you. I don't want any part of it." I crossed my arms. "You already had a part in it." He didn't argue, didn't deny, didn't deflect. He simply nodded, shoulders slumped. "You're right," he said, "and I was an idiot. But I didn't know how far she'd take it. I didn't know she would—" He let his head drop. "Lydia's not well." A bitter laugh escaped me. "I'm aware." "No," he said quickly, "I mean it. She's unraveling fast. She's obsessed with this idea that you stole something from her, that she deserves everything you have. She's not just angry, she's fixated. She talks about you like you're the villain in her life story." There was something about the way he said it, half grieving, half terrified, that made me lean in despite myself. "Why contact me now?" His jaw tightened. "Because last night she said she was going to escalate. She said if she couldn't get what she deserved through legal channels, she'd make the world believe you were unstable. She mentioned calling for welfare checks. She said she'd make people see. And Evelyn, she's creating fake messages, screenshots, ones that make you look unhinged. My blood chilled. She's fabricating evidence? He nodded miserably. She showed me some of them, said she'd keep pushing until someone believed her enough to intervene. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. She'll destroy her own life doing that, I whispered. She doesn't care, Derek said. She thinks she's been wronged. She thinks you owe her. She thinks everything you have should have been hers, that you just got lucky, that your success is something you owe the family. And she'll burn everything to make reality match what's in her head. I stared at him, searching for the angle, the manipulation, the self-interest behind his words. But all I found was regret, real, bitter regret. "What do you want from me?" I finally asked. "Nothing," he said. "I'm leaving the state tomorrow. She's not going to stop coming after you, and I don't want to be anywhere near what she does next. I'm only here because I'm sorry, and because you deserve a warning." For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then he slid his phone across the table. "What's this?" "Proof," he said. "Recordings, screenshots, everything she's said in the last week. Use it however you need." I didn't touch it. "Why should I trust anything from you?" He flinched, and when he spoke again, his voice trembled. "Because I saw what she becomes when she wants something. And I'm scared she's going to hurt you, and herself, and anyone in her path." I swallowed hard. "Take it," he said. "Then forget you ever met me." When I finally picked up the phone, he stood abruptly. "Good luck," he murmured, then walked away before I could respond. For a long moment, I sat alone with the phone in my hand, feeling its weight like a burning coal. Then I left the cafe, drove home, and forwarded everything to Jonathan before my key was even in the door. 5 minutes later, he called. "This changes everything," he said simply. "What do we do now?" I asked. "We file a countersuit," he replied, "not as retaliation, but as protection. With this evidence, her false claims, her fabricated messages, her coordinated smear campaign, she's exposed. And Evelyn, we're not doing this to punish her. We're doing it to stop her." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of legal language, sworn statements, notarized documents, and screenshots that felt like glimpses into a mind unraveling thread by thread. Hearing my own sister, my childhood playmate, my mother's daughter, plot against me in her own words was a grief I hadn't anticipated. But it also clarified something I'd been resisting. This wasn't just a family conflict. This was self-preservation. When the countersuit was formally filed, something in me exhaled for the first time in months. Not victory, not relief. Just the release of a truth I had been holding back. I couldn't save her, and I didn't have to let her destroy me. 2 weeks later, the police knocked on my door. Not to arrest me, not to investigate me, but to deliver a formal notice that Lydia was the subject of a harassment complaint and a cease and desist order. She'd crossed too many lines, shown up at my workplace, sent dozens of unhinged messages, tried to contact my neighbors with fabricated claims. She had become legally and undeniably a threat to my safety. I accepted the notice with steady hands. The officer gave me a sympathetic look. "Family cases like this, they're the hardest. I'm sorry you're going through it." "Me too," I whispered. Word spread quickly. Lydia spiraled publicly, posting frantic, contradictory rants that undid her carefully crafted narrative. Her followers began to question her. Her coworkers distanced themselves. And finally, inevitably, her world shrank down to exactly what she had created: isolation, chaos, consequences. She didn't contact me again. Not through lawyers, not through social media, not through people she manipulated into becoming her voice. For the first time in my adult life, the noise stopped. 3 months later, during a warm Arizona spring evening, I sat on my balcony overlooking the city, a glass of wine in hand, feeling the weight of the journey settle into something softer, something like closure. I hadn't won anything dramatic. I hadn't destroyed her. I hadn't sought revenge. I had simply protected what was mine. And somewhere in the process, I regained something I didn't know I'd lost: my peace. The next morning, I woke to a message from Maya. She moved. Out of state, no forwarding address. Whatever war she thought she was fighting, it's over. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Good. I hope she finds the help she needs. I meant it." Healing isn't always a reconciliation. Sometimes it's a boundary, sometimes it's distance, and sometimes it's the understanding that closing the door is not cruelty, it's survival. That weekend, I invited Maya and a few close friends over for dinner. My home, unchallenged, uninterrupted, unthreatened, felt warm and full again. As we ate under the soft glow of my dining room lights, laughter echoing against the hardwood floors, I realized something quietly profound. My life had begun again. Not with spectacle, not with vengeance, not with dramatic triumph, with peace, with freedom, with the steady, unwavering truth that I had chosen myself. When the last guest left and the house fell quiet again, I walked through each room slowly, gratitude settling over me like a blanket. This was my space, my sanctuary, my earned life. And tonight, for the first time in a very long time, it felt truly, completely mine. If you stayed with me through this journey of betrayal, boundaries, and reclaiming what's yours, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which moment hit you the hardest? Drop a comment below. Tap that like button if the story resonated with you, and make sure you subscribe so you never miss another story about strength, survival, and the quiet power of choosing yourself.